She was a decorated Army general on her way to a NATO conference when a racist cop stopped her, chained her wrists, and demanded a payoff. Travelers walked by, not knowing they were witnessing the start of a national scandal. Within minutes, the arrogant officers were begging on their knees. How did power flip so fast? Stick around, because the answer will shock you. Before we begin, make yourself comfortable, hit like, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Major General Sarah Thompson, a 52-year-old woman with sharp eyes and a commanding presence, stood tall in the bustling chaos of Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. The cold steel chains bit into her wrists, fastened tightly by two young police officers who had stopped her near Terminal 3's glass exit. Her crisp, tailored uniform, adorned with medals from her 30-year career in the U.S. Army, gleamed under the harsh airport lights, but it couldn't shield her from the humiliation. Her simple leather briefcase, a gift from her late husband, lay at her feet, ignored by the officers. Sarah, a black woman who had risen to one of the highest ranks in the Pentagon, felt the weight of their stares. Officer Tom Bradley, a cocky 30-year-old with a buzz cut and a smirk, and Officer Jake Patel, a nervous 25-year-old who kept shifting his weight. Bradley, clearly in charge, folded his arms and sneered, his green eyes scanning her uniform like it was a costume. "Well, well, look at this fancy lady," he said loudly, drawing curious glances from hurried travelers. "All these medals, this pricey bag. Bet you're carrying something illegal, huh?" His tone dripped with sarcasm, and he leaned closer, his breath smelling of cheap coffee. Patel, trying to sound tough, mumbled, "Yeah, Tom, looks suspicious. Nobody dresses like that unless they're hiding something." Sarah stayed calm, her face unreadable. She'd faced worse, battlefields, war rooms, prejudice, but this stung. She noted every detail. Bradley's badge number 2147, Patel's 3091, the flicker of a security camera 20 feet away, the clatter of luggage wheels on the polished floor, the faint jet fuel smell. Passengers stared, some whispering, but none stopped. Bradley's smirk grew. "You seem too rich for a regular soldier," he taunted. "What's your deal? Smuggling cash? Drugs?" Sarah's silence unnerved him, but she stood firm, her dark eyes steady. The contrast was stark. A decorated military leader, chained like a criminal, facing two officers whose prejudice and greed were painfully clear. The bright terminal lights couldn't hide the darkness of their actions, and Sarah knew this was only the beginning. Officer Tom Bradley grew restless with Major General Sarah Thompson's calm silence. Her steady gaze made him shift uncomfortably in the busy Terminal 3 of O'Hare Airport. The chains around her wrists clinked faintly as she stood, unflinching, her military uniform crisp despite the ordeal. Bradley stepped closer, his voice low but sharp, like he was sharing a secret. "Listen, ma'am," he said, his coffee-scented breath hitting her face. "We can drag you to the station, search your bag, check your records. It's a lot of paperwork, you know. Could keep you here for days, mess up your fancy plans." He paused, his smirk returning, eyes glinting with greed. "Or," he continued, "you can make this easy. Just a little something for us, say $1,000 cash. Pocket change for someone like you, right?" He nodded at her leather briefcase, assuming it held wads of money. "Pay up, we let you go, no questions asked. Quick and clean." Officer Jake Patel, standing nearby, looked tense, his hands fidgeting with his belt. He nodded weakly, echoing Bradley. Yeah, just pay, and it's done." Sarah's eyes turned icy, but she said nothing, her silence louder than words. She knew exactly what this was. Extortion, plain and simple. Bradley's smug grin widened, thinking he had her cornered, a lone black woman in a shiny uniform, scared and ready to pay. Patel's nervous glances around the terminal showed he was less sure, but he followed Bradley's lead. The two officers, blinded by greed and bias, had no clue they were digging a hole that would swallow their careers whole. Just 20 minutes earlier, Major General Sarah Thompson had stepped off a commercial flight from London to Chicago's O'Hare Airport. At 52, she was one of the highest-ranking officers in the U.S. Army, leading strategic operations at the Pentagon. She was in Chicago for a classified NATO defense conference, traveling low-key as a regular passenger to observe airport security without drawing attention. Her security team stayed at a distance, as she preferred, blending into the crowd. Sarah, a black woman who had broken countless barriers in her 30-year career, wore a tailored military uniform, simple but sharp, with no flashy insignia. Her leather briefcase, a gift from her late husband, was practical, not showy, and her small rolling suitcase was plain black, no designer labels. She wanted to look like any other traveler, not a top military official. After clearing customs and collecting her bag, she headed toward the taxi stand, her mind on the conference ahead. But her confident stride and polished appearance caught the eye of Officer Tom Bradley. Maybe it was her poise, or the fact that a black woman in a high-ranking uniform stood out in the sea of tired travelers. Bradley, with his partner Officer Jake Patel trailing behind, decided she was worth a closer look. As Sarah neared the exit, Bradley stepped in her path, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. "Ma'am, we need to see your ID," he said, his tone clipped, already suspicious. Sarah paused, sensing trouble but staying calm. She knew her presence, successful, authoritative, alone, had triggered their bias. Years of facing prejudice in the military had taught her to expect this, but it still stung. She handed over her driver's license, keeping her real rank hidden for now. Bradley's questions grew sharper, and Sarah braced herself, knowing this stop wasn't random. It was the start of something ugly, and she was ready to face it head-on. As Major General Sarah Thompson walked toward the taxi stand in O'Hare Airport's Terminal 3, Officer Tom Bradley blocked her path, his eyes narrow with suspicion. "Ma'am, we need to check your ID," he said sharply, his tone more accusing than professional. Sarah, 52 and a seasoned Army leader, stopped calmly, her leather briefcase in one hand, suitcase trailing behind. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, her voice steady. Bradley smirked. "Random security check," he said, eyeing her crisp military uniform and polished shoes. Sarah pulled her driver's license from her briefcase, a simple ID that didn't reveal her Pentagon role. Bradley snatched it, studying it longer than needed, then fired off questions. "Where are you coming from? Why you alone? What's in that bag? How'd you afford all this?" His voice grew rude, laced with prejudice, assuming her success was suspicious. Officer Jake Patel, hovering nearby, nodded along, his nervous eyes darting between Bradley and Sarah. Sarah answered briefly, keeping her cool, but the questions turned hostile. "Officer, I've shown my ID," she said firmly. "If there's no reason, I'd like to go." Bradley's face reddened. "Reason? You look like you're hiding something," he snapped. "We need to search your bag." Sarah's eyes locked on his. "On what grounds? Do you have a warrant?" Her calm challenge made Bradley bristle, his authority questioned. "That's it," he growled. "You're acting suspicious. Patel, chain her up. We're taking her in." Patel hesitated, his hands shaky, but under Bradley's glare he pulled out a set of steel chains, wrapping them tightly around Sarah's wrists. "You can't do this," Sarah said, her voice sharp now. "This is illegal." Bradley laughed. "Illegal? Look at you, all fancy. Bet you're not so clean." The chains clinked as Sarah stood tall, her face unyielding. Travelers glanced over, then hurried away, leaving her alone with two officers whose bias and power abuse were clear. Sarah's mind raced, cataloging every detail, ready to turn the tables. Major General Sarah Thompson stood chained in O'Hare Airport's Terminal 3, her wrists aching from the tight steel links, but her mind sharp as ever. Despite the humiliation by officers Tom Bradley and Jake Patel, the 52-year-old Army leader stayed calm. her years of commanding troops in high-stakes missions keeping her steady. She'd faced worse than these two bullying cops, but their prejudice and greed fueled her resolve. Every detail was etched in her memory. Bradley's badge, 2147. Patel's 3091. The security camera 20 feet away. The jet fuel smell in the air. When Bradley's smug demand for a $1,000 bribe came, Sarah wasn't shocked. Her silence wasn't fear, it was strategy, letting him talk himself into a deeper trap. His taunts grew bolder, thinking he'd scared her. But Sarah was waiting for the right moment. As Patel's hand nudged her to move toward the station, she spoke, her voice clear and firm, cutting through the terminal's noise. "I need to make a phone call." Bradley laughed, his smirk wide. "What, calling your rich boss to pay us off?" he mocked. Sarah ignored him, repeating, "I need to call my deputy." Bradley frowned, confused. "Deputy? What, you some big-shot soldier?" he scoffed, still thinking she was bluffing. "Get my phone," Sarah said, nodding at her briefcase. "It's in the side pocket." Patel, unsure, looked at Bradley, who shrugged, thinking it might bring cash. Patel fumbled through the bag, pulling out a sleek black phone. Military grade, encrypted but plain-looking. With her hands chained, Sarah deftly tapped the screen, activating a secure line with a voice command. Patel held the phone to her ear. It rang once before a crisp voice answered. "Colonel Harris, it's Thompson," Sarah said, her tone now pure authority, like she was addressing troops. "I'm at O'Hare, Terminal 3, near Exit 5. 2 officers, Tom Bradley, badge 2147, and Jake Patel, badge 3091, have chained me illegally and attempted extortion." Her voice grew colder. "I need the Army CID Rapid Response Team here now. Contact General Mason at Fort Meade. Priority 1. Bradley's smirk vanished. Patel's face paled. Words like Army CID and Priority 1 hit them like thunder. Who was this woman? Sarah ended the call. "Stand by, Harris." She looked at Bradley, her eyes like steel. "You've made a terrible mistake," she said, her voice low. "Chaining a Major General of the United States Army." Their world began to crumble. Within 8 minutes of Major General Sarah Thompson's call, a ripple of tension swept through O'Hare Airport's Terminal 3. A team of 6 plainclothes Army Criminal Investigation Division, CID agents, led by Colonel James Mason, moved swiftly toward Exit 5. Their sharp eyes and disciplined strides parted the crowd of travelers like a knife through butter. Mason, a grizzled 55-year-old with a buzz cut and a dark suit, spotted Sarah immediately. Her wrists still bound by steel chains, her Army uniform pristine despite the ordeal. Officers Tom Bradley and Jake Patel stood frozen, their faces pale as they sensed the shift in power. "Major General Thompson," Mason said, his voice heavy with concern. "Are you all right?" Sarah nodded, her expression calm but commanding. "I'm fine, James, but these officers have crossed a line." Mason's eyes narrowed as he turned to Bradley and Patel, who shrank under his gaze. "Disarm them," he ordered. 2 CID agents, broad-shouldered and efficient, stepped forward, removing the officers' guns, radios, and badges with practiced speed. Bradley's hands shook. Patel looked like he might faint. Another agent approached Sarah, saying, "Ma'am, let me get those off." With a soft clink, he unlocked the chains, freeing her wrists. Sarah rubbed the red marks, then took charge. "Colonel, secure this area," she said firmly. "No one in or out except our team. Pull all security camera footage from the past hour, every angle near Exit 5. Check if these officers have body cams. If they do, seize them. Collect their radios and phones for analysis. Find any witnesses, passengers, staff, and take their names for statements." Mason nodded, relaying orders to his team, who fanned out to execute her commands. The terminal's bustle seemed to pause, travelers gawking at the scene. Sergeant Mike Larson, Bradley and Patel's supervisor rushed over, his face ashen. "Ma'am, Colonel, I'm so sorry," he stammered, but Sarah cut him off. "Your officers will answer for this, Sergeant." Bradley, his bravado gone, mumbled, "We didn't know, ma'am, please." Patel's eyes welled up, but Sarah's gaze was cold. "You don't chain an innocent woman and demand bribes because you didn't know," she said. "Stay quiet and cooperate." The CID agents stood watch over the trembling officers, now stripped of authority. Sarah's orders were clear. Every shred of evidence, cameras, devices, witnesses, would be gathered to ensure justice. The weight of her rank and the Army's power loomed large, and Bradley and Patel knew their careers were over. Once the scene at O'Hare Airport's Terminal 3 was under control, the Army Criminal Investigation Division, CID, took charge of officers Tom Bradley and Jake Patel. The case, involving Major General Sarah Thompson, a top Pentagon official, was handed to federal authorities due to its severity: abuse of power, racial profiling, and attempted extortion. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois assigned Assistant U.S. Attorney Priya Sharma, a sharp 38-year-old prosecutor known for tackling corruption, to lead the case. She worked closely with Colonel James Mason's CID team to build an airtight file. The Chicago Port Authority Police, shamed by the scandal, launched an internal probe, but with overwhelming evidence from the CID, Bradley and Patel were suspended within hours and fired days later, their badges gone forever. The CID's investigation was thorough. Security cameras in Terminal 3 captured every moment: Bradley stopping Sarah, the heated exchange, the illegal chaining, and the bribe demand. Patel's body cam, which he forgot to switch off, was a goldmine. It recorded Bradley's sneering voice demanding $1,000 and his racist jabs, clear as day. The audio left no room for doubt. Sarah gave a formal statement, calm and precise, detailing the incident without emotion, her military training evident. Colonel Mason and his team confirmed her condition, chained and humiliated, when they arrived. They also interviewed a dozen witnesses, including a gate agent and 3 passengers who backed Sarah's account. One elderly traveler said, "Those cops were rude, picking on her for no reason." The CID checked Bradley and Patel's records. Bradley had 2 prior complaints for aggressive behavior, though never disciplined. Patel's file was cleaner, but notes described him as easily led. Faced with damning evidence, Patel, advised by his lawyer, cracked. He pleaded guilty to lesser charges and spilled everything, admitting Bradley planned the extortion, and he went along, scared to say no. His testimony sealed Bradley's fate. Priya Sharma presented the case to a federal grand jury, who reviewed the body cam footage, camera recordings, and witness statements. They indicted Bradley and Patel on 2 counts: violating civil rights under color of law and conspiracy to commit extortion under the Hobbs Act, since the airport affected interstate commerce. Sharma rejected Bradley's lawyer's plea deal, insisting on a public trial to show no one was above the law. The case wasn't just about Sarah, it was about trust in the system. Bradley and Patel, now former officers, were arrested by federal marshals and held in custody, their futures bleak. The wheels of justice were turning fast, and Sarah's resolve ensured the truth would come out, no matter how powerful the offenders thought they were. The trial of former officers Tom Bradley and Jake Patel unfolded in the U.S. District Court in Chicago, drawing crowds of reporters, activists, and curious locals. The case, involving Major General Sarah Thompson, a high-ranking Black Army officer chained and extorted at O'Hare Airport, sparked heated debates about racism and police abuse. Assistant U.S. Attorney Priya Sharma led the prosecution, presenting a rock-solid case to the 12-person jury. She started with security camera footage from Terminal 3, showing Bradley stopping Sarah, questioning her rudely, and chaining her wrists without cause. The real bombshell was Patel's body cam video. When it played, the courtroom went dead silent. Bradley's voice, smug and clear, demanded $1,000 to let Sarah go, his words dripping with racial slurs. Jurors shifted uncomfortably, some shaking their heads. The evidence was undeniable. Major General Sarah Thompson took the stand, her Army uniform sharp, her voice steady as a rock. At 52, she spoke with the calm authority of a Pentagon leader, recounting every detail, the stop, the chains, the bribe demand, without a hint of anger. She stuck to the facts, describing how Bradley targeted her for looking too successful. Her composure impressed the jury, and Bradley's lawyer couldn't shake her, his questions falling flat. Colonel James Mason, the CID leader, testified next, describing Sarah's chained wrists and the officer's panic when his team arrived. Patel, as part of his plea deal, also testified, his voice shaky. He admitted following Bradley's lead, confirming the extortion plan was Bradley's idea, but owning his role in it. His honesty hurt Bradley's defense. Bradley's lawyer tried to downplay the incident, claiming it was a misunderstanding in the stressful airport setting. He called the $1,000 demand a joke, not serious extortion, and denied racial bias, saying Bradley's slurs were heat-of-the-moment words. The jury didn't buy it. The body cam was too clear. Patel's lawyer leaned on his client's youth and regret, highlighting his cooperation to beg for leniency. After both sides gave their final arguments, the jury deliberated for just 4 hours. They returned, faces grim, and the foreman stood. "We find defendant Tom Bradley guilty of violating civil rights under color of law and guilty of conspiracy to commit extortion under the Hobbs Act," he read. "We find defendant Jake Patel guilty of the same charges." Bradley slumped in his chair, face pale. Patel closed his eyes, head bowed. The packed courtroom buzzed as reporters scribbled notes. Sarah sat quietly, her expression unchanged, but her presence loomed large. Justice had spoken, and the message was clear. No badge could shield abuse of power. The trial exposed ugly truths, but it also showed the system could hold wrongdoers accountable. A few weeks after the guilty verdict, the sentencing hearing for former officers Tom Bradley and Jake Patel took place in Chicago's federal courthouse. The room was packed with reporters, activists, and police officials, all eyes on the 2 men who had chained and tried to extort Major General Sarah Thompson. Assistant U.S. Attorney Priya Sharma stood tall, arguing for tough sentences. She called the officers' actions a betrayal of public trust, driven by racism and greed, and stressed the need for a strong punishment to deter others. They abused their power at a major airport, targeting a black woman for her success, she said, her voice firm. This wasn't a mistake, it was a crime. Bradley's lawyer pleaded for mercy, citing his client's momentary lapse and family burdens. Patel's lawyer leaned on his client's cooperation and young age, begging for a lighter sentence. Major General Sarah Thompson attended, her Army uniform crisp, her presence commanding. She gave a victim statement, not focusing on her own pain, but on the bigger picture. "When officers act out of prejudice or greed," she said calmly, "they break the trust between the public and those meant to protect them. This sentence must show that justice applies to everyone, badge or no badge." Her words, steady and powerful, silenced the room, resonating with the judge and spectators. The federal judge, a stern woman with years of experience, looked at Bradley and Patel. "You were given authority to serve, not to bully," she said sharply. "You chained a respected military leader, insulted her race, and demanded money. Your actions attacked the rule of law itself." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Tom Bradley, this court sentences you to 10 years in federal prison. Jake Patel, considering your cooperation, you are sentenced to 6 years." Bradley's face crumpled. Patel stared at the floor as marshals cuffed them and led them away. The sentences sent shockwaves through Chicago's police force and beyond, a warning that abuse wouldn't be tolerated. The Port Authority Police introduced reforms, stricter oversight, mandatory body cams, and anti-bias training to prevent future scandals. Sarah's handling of the ordeal boosted her reputation as a principled leader. The case became a national example, showing that even the powerful faced consequences. Back at the Pentagon, Sarah felt no joy in the officer's downfall, only relief that justice prevailed. The incident, painful as it was, strengthened her resolve to fight for fairness in a system still grappling with prejudice. As she returned to her duties, she knew the work of building trust and accountability was far from over, but she was ready for the challenge. Back at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., Major General Sarah Thompson sat in her office, the view of the Potomac River calm outside her window. The 52-year-old Black Army leader had just finished a tough briefing on global defense strategies, her mind still sharp despite the O'Hare Airport ordeal. The incident, being chained and extorted by officers Tom Bradley and Jake Patel, lingered as a painful reminder of the racism and abuse still plaguing America. Yet Sarah felt no glee over their prison sentences, only quiet satisfaction that justice had been served. The system, flawed as it was, had held 2 rogue cops accountable, and that mattered. Her calm handling of the crisis, from staying composed under pressure to directing the Army CID's response, earned her respect across the military and beyond. She knew the fight for a fair, honest system wasn't over. Prejudice, greed, and power abuse were stubborn foes, but Sarah was undeterred. The O'Hare case had only deepened her resolve to lead with integrity, ensuring those in uniform upheld the highest standards. She thought of her 30-year career, breaking barriers as a Black woman in a male-dominated field, facing slurs and doubts, but rising to the top. This incident was another battle, one she'd won not for herself, but for the principle that no one was above the law. Sarah took a deep breath, her desk piled with reports on troop deployments and cybersecurity. She picked up the phone to call her deputy, Colonel Harris, to discuss a new training program on ethics for soldiers. Her real victory wasn't in punishing Bradley and Patel, but in believing the system could correct itself when guided by truth and accountability. The O'Hare clash showed that dignity and justice could prevail, even in the face of ugly bias. That belief fueled her as she continued her mission to protect the nation and build a military rooted in fairness, ready to face whatever challenges came next. Major General Sarah Thompson leaned back in her Pentagon office chair, the weight of the O'Hare incident still lingering in her thoughts. The ordeal, being chained and extorted by corrupt officers, taught her a profound truth. Justice requires courage to confront wrongdoing, no matter how powerful the offender. Sarah knew that trust in institutions, whether military or police, is fragile, easily shattered by prejudice or greed. Yet her victory wasn't just in seeing officers Bradley and Patel punished. It was in proving that standing firm for what's right can spark change. The reforms in the Port Authority Police, the nationwide push for accountability, and the renewed focus on anti-bias training were ripples of her resolve. For Sarah, the lesson was clear. Integrity and fairness must guide those in power, and every individual has a role in demanding it. In daily life, this means speaking up against injustice, whether it's a small act of bias at work or a larger abuse of authority. It's about staying calm under pressure, gathering facts, and acting with purpose, just as Sarah did. Her story reminds us that change starts with one person's refusal to bow to wrong, inspiring others to follow. As she returned to her mission of leading with honor, Sarah hoped her experience would encourage everyone, soldiers, civilians, neighbors, to hold themselves and others accountable, building a world where dignity triumphs over division. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch more meaningful tales like Sarah's. Your support keeps us sharing stories that inspire courage and change, reminding us all that justice and integrity are worth fighting for. Don't miss our next video. Another powerful lesson awaits.